flow.
Welcome to episode 75 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. He's Lepore, I'm Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. Training camps have opened across the National Hockey League. Some juicy stuff going on with the Leafs. We will talk about Auston Matthews' contract situation, Kyle Dubas' contract situation, PK Subban retired after 13 years in the NHL, and the Winnipeg Jets stripped Blake Wheeler of the C. So we have a lot to get into in this episode. I promise you want to stay tuned to the very end because this one is going to be juicy. But before we get into all that, it is time to welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How you doing, man?
Anthony Bruno, as always, thank you for having me. I'm doing very well. Episode 75 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast. We had mentioned recently that we're getting into a lull of jersey numbers to give shout outs to. So, as people know, I'm a big jersey snob. So let's give a shout out to the 91-92 NHL jerseys that had the patch, that beautiful 75 patch on them. For you kids that don't remember, go on Google, look it up. The patches the teams put out today are absolutely terrible. I can't believe the new final one. Absolutely disgusting compared to what they had in the past. And yeah, that 75, it's a beauty, man, and it's collected. And if you have one lying around, they're worth a little bit of cash.
Do you have one lying around, Lepore?
I have a 91-92 Quebec Nordiques Joe Sakic jersey that has that patch on it.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's a good one to have, right? Like the whole nostalgia of the Nordiques in that year. And yeah, so that's the one I got. I've been looking for a Gretzky. I've been looking for a white Gretzky because it was the 25th anniversary of the Kings as well. So they had a patch on their shoulder, but hard to find. And when you do find one, they ain't cheap. So wish me good luck.
Yeah, if anyone's going to find it, it's you, Lepore.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, man. Let's get right into this episode. Starting things off, of course, with Auston Matthews. I think this was the biggest news from the first day of training camp. We all knew this was coming. He was going to get asked about his contract situation, and I thought he handled it really well. Yeah. I'm not going to go through all of his comments, but I will go through the key comments that he made on the podium at the start of training camp when he was asked about his contract situation. And as we all know, he still has 2 years left on his deal. It's not a code red situation yet. But here's what Matthews said. I've loved my time here. I really love playing in the city of Toronto. I consider it home now. He then went on to say, there's nothing that can be done. I'm under contract for 2 more years. I can't extend for another 10 months. I'll just kind of leave it at that. And the whole extension thing is that Matthews is not eligible to sign an extension until July 1st, 2023. Mm-hmm. So he left it at that. He said he doesn't want to talk about his contract anymore. He addressed it right now at the start of training camp. He wants to focus on the season, focus on winning, and hopefully winning a Stanley Cup. And I know people are probably laughing right now.
Well, you're laughing at it. You had a giggle to yourself.
But Lepore, your thoughts on what Matthew said and how he handled this situation?
As a Leafs fan, I think I can only be happy with regard to what he exactly said. He said all the right things. Word by word, he said all the right things. And we'll often say when a player answers a question, oh, they handled that very well. They gave the right answer. He handled that 5-star, 10 out of 10 very well, in my opinion, because he had the perfect combination of putting Leafs fans, I'm not going to say at ease because we're never at ease, but also not guaranteeing anything. Number one, because he's probably not allowed. And number two, because he just wouldn't do that, like for the sake of negotiation. And I'm sure with what his agent's telling him to say. But if we had to look at it from the broad scope, it's positive. It was all positive. And all we can hope at this point is that he feels this way in a year and he puts pen to paper as soon as he can. And I'll ask you this one, Bruno, on his end. or if you were Auston Matthews, would you have it in your brain that the decision had to be made by July 1 of next year? Simply because I cannot imagine the nightmare, the absolute shambolic nightmare that will occur if Auston Matthews is unsigned playing next season. It will be the question every day after practice, after every game, to him, the management, other players. It'll put a big cloud over the team. So in my mind anyway, I would want to have the decision made in my head immediately. And by that, I mean as soon as I could. So I hope he feels that way. And I think for the team, it would be best. And I mean, that's not really argumentative. That's the case. But it's going to be really, really ugly if we're going into next season and he's kind of just giving PR answers because fear is going to rip through all of us. What do you think?
If he doesn't sign his extension on July 1st or within a few days of July 1st, people are going to lose their minds in Leafs Nation.
We'll have
it's going to be a disaster because can you imagine heading into training camp next season and Matthews still hasn't signed his extension?
Mm-hmm.
It would be a disaster. And, you know, you could look at Nathan MacKinnon, and we'll get into this as well. He waited. MacKinnon just signed his extension, you know, like a few days ago, essentially, right? And he waited right until the eve of training camp, essentially, to re-sign with the Colorado Avalanche. So I don't think the same thing is going to fly with Auston Matthews and the Leafs. People want him to sign that extension immediately. And if he doesn't, then I think we're all going to be under the impression that something's going on and that he could possibly be leaving. But what I will say, Lepore, is that I feel really comfortable, honestly, based on what he said. And I know he said all the right things, and people are like, oh, that's exactly what John Tavares said. And that's what all these guys say, right? They're just kind of beating around the bush and they're not giving like a, you know, like a 100% answer, like I'm staying or leaving. Like they can't really say that. But
right.
I'll point to this, Lepore, not even the whole fact that he said he loves playing in Toronto and he considers it home. I don't even look at that. For him to go out of his way and tell people, listen, everybody, nothing can be done now. We're still 10 months away from this. I can't sign the extension for another 10 months. I'll just leave it at that. To me, that was the most powerful quote of everything he gave. And I think a lot of people haven't really talked about that. But for him to go out of his way, and maybe I'm reading into it a little bit too much, but for him to say, hold on, everybody, I'm still under contract for 2 years and I can't extend for another 10 months. I'll just leave it at that. To me, that indicated everyone chill out. I love playing here. And 10 months from now, I'm going to sign this extension. Everyone just relax and enjoy the upcoming season.
So you're promising to your friend Michael Lepore and everyone listening in GFP Nation that Auston Matthews will sign on July 1st, right, Bruno?
I think it, honestly, I think it's almost a lock that he signs.
Wow.
And nothing is 100%. Let me say that. Nothing is 100%. A lot can happen between now and July 1st, 2023 with the GM, with the coach, with the team in general. A lot could happen. But based on what he said and based on the state of the team right now, I think it's close to a lock that he signs that extension.
There you go. That's what we like to hear, Bruno. It'd be interesting to take cuts of headlines or tweets day by day, like the week building up to July 1, a few days later, if it goes a few weeks later, a few months later, and just to have like a whole track of it would be absolutely hilarious, because just to see like the complete psychoticness of Leafs fans and Leafs media. But I just hope it's avoided. And like I said, I'm sure he wants it and his agent wanted it to be avoided as well. And to be fair, and again, times change and things are different, he did give himself time the first time he extended. Like he didn't wait until the end, I should say, until like, ooh, the clock was ticking. If I remember correctly, the contract was signed kind of in the new year. I might be wrong about that, but I remember it was during the season, kind of like midway through the season. But hopefully it's signed even before that this time around. And I cannot imagine, like, I can't put into words the sigh of relief that Leafs fans would have, like, getting that news that Auston Matthews will be a Toronto Maple Leaf for an extended period of time. And I mean, we'd all be hoping for an 8-year extension just to say, like, you know what, we got him. Like, we have him for his career. But even then, I mean, he was calculated last time. So I wouldn't put it past him and his agent to signing another weird one and betting on himself even more and again.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Matthews' next contract because we just saw Nathan MacKinnon become the highest paid player in the NHL by $100,000.
Yeah, we'll get
His
into that.
extension's going to kick in next season. He signed an 8-year deal for $12.6 million a year, a little bit more than Connor McDavid's making. He's coming in at $12.5 million. So, what do you think Matthews' next contract is going to look like? Because I would be stunned if he doesn't become the highest paid player in the NHL.
He's going to be the highest paid player in the NHL. I had someone ask me recently, last couple of days, if I thought Matthews could command more than MacKinnon. And I said, he can and he will. He has a Hart Trophy, 2 Maurice Rocket Richard trophies, a Ted Lindsay trophy. I know people are saying, oh, MacKinnon has a cup, but at the end of the day, that's a team accomplishment, not an individual accomplishment. And even from a negotiation side, and I'm sure the Avalanche knew this as well, Joe Sakic and co. Did anyone even have the thought in their mind that MacKinnon could walk away next year? No. Like, even if they didn't win the cup or they were still a really competitive team, they have Makar locked up. Makar was going to re-sign Matthews, and maybe it's a Leafs fandom thing where we're all nervous all the time. But I'll put it this way, we wouldn't be absolutely flabbergasted if Matthews left. Like, it would suck and we'd be crying, but no one could say that like this was like a punch in the face surprise. But again, it's time. It's 2 years from now or 1 year from now, depending on when he signs. He's going to be the highest paid player in the league. He'll be the highest paid player in the league. If I had to guess a number, I'd say somewhere around 13 or 13.5 million. And then McDavid will surpass him after that as time goes on. There's also the matter of, if we're just looking at dollar amounts, the cap's going to start to creep up now, like post-COVID bullshit. So, I mean, what we can look at it percentage-wise, how it compares to MacKinnon and other players. But in terms of a raw number, I don't think there is any doubt that it's going to start with a 1-3. Like, I really do feel that way. What's your guess?
Yeah, I think so too. And I think you nailed it with the cap situation, with the cap continuing to creep up year after year. Now that we've, gotten away from all the COVID stuff and the flat cap, these guys are going to start to get paid more. And we just saw MacKinnon become the highest paid player in the league. Matthews will become the highest paid player in the league. And I agree. I think it's going to be somewhere in the 13 million range. Mm-hmm. And then when McDavid becomes a free agent, he's going to be the highest paid player in the league. So, and that's the thing. You can't really look into it like, oh my God, Nathan MacKinnon's the new highest paid player in the league. It's all a timing thing, right? It's right. When do these guys' contracts come up? What's the situation? It's going to be one after the other. But I agree. I think Matthews will be in the 13 million range. And it's not going to look that bad at all if the cap keeps going up. The question is, what do you do with some of these other guys? Like when Nylander's contract is up and Marner. And, what decisions do you make at that point? How much you're paying those guys, right? I think those will be even bigger decisions, honestly, because Matthews, you just give him, you write him the check for 13.5 million and away you go.
I think to me, and like now we're looking ahead, again, the whole percentage of the cap thing, if we looked at it from when they signed Matthews, Marner, Nylander, none of us would have a problem with them signing at the same percentage of the cap. I mean, people could say Nylander could demand more, and maybe, but in that ballpark, none of us would really have a problem with that. And I think I will say, and I don't think many Leafs fans would argue with me, you don't hear this too often in sports and the NHL specifically, Tavares, if he stays with the Leafs, is going to take less. So that would free up cap space. Where I do see curveballs coming at the Leafs, and when I say curveballs, these are good decisions to have, is if someone fires up the lineup. Like if Robertson is a star or Sandin and Liljegren can really develop, or some other prospect becomes a big star player, that's where things can get complicated because then you have decisions to be made. But in terms of the numbers and percentage of the cap, I don't think any Leafs fans have a problem with the numbers being the same. And Dubas made the point. He said when he was being interviewed, we have a lot of cap flexibility because 2 years from now and 3 years from now, it's Matthews, Nylander, Marner, and Tavares freeing up. So it allows them to make the decisions. And I'm sure those decisions were calculated years past when they signed them. They didn't want them all to be at the same time. I actually even heard, I remember reading someone's opinion, and whether it was opinion or they had a source, that I don't know if you remember the tank year for Matthews. The Leafs actually played Nylander the last year of the last few games of the season. Like they got him his 10 games to take 1 year off of the LC. And the assumption was, even that, but thinking that far ahead, was that they knew they were going to draft, in the top 5 coming up, and they were going to get someone who's going to enter the lineup right away, and hopefully a star player. And they were fairly certain Marner was going to be in the lineup the next year as well. And they didn't want Nylander, Matthews, and Marner all finishing their ELCs at the same time. So I'm sure, again, it was figured out that way when these guys all extended. But it's going to be fun in Leafland, man. Can't wait.
Because you said it, man. 2 years from now, even looking at the D-core, Muzzin has 2 years left on his deal. Brody has 2 years left on his deal.
Nice.
So all those guys are going to be UFAs at the same time.
Okay.
So there's going to be a lot of cap space available, a lot of decisions to be made for Kyle Dubas. So we'll see how that all plays out. It's time for a quick break to let you know that today's episode comes from True Classic. Our brand new sponsor has the absolute best fitting t-shirts a man can buy. Just take a look. This thing looks amazing. Finding the right t-shirt, no matter what body type you have, can be incredibly frustrating. Most t-shirts are either way too tight on your gut or look way too big and boxy. It's time to upgrade with a t-shirt that's right for you. True Classic has already helped over 2 million men finally get a better fit at an affordable price. Our listeners get access to the best deal they have to offer. For a limited time only, get 25% off with the code GFP at trueclassic.com. Lepore, I love these t-shirts, man.
These t-shirts are incredible. Gentlemen, there are a few things in your life that you should take very seriously. Your finances, your car, your shoes, your significant other. But what should also be on that list is your t-shirts. Don't be a total schleb and wear a t-shirt that's too big with boxy arms and you look like a total joke. Have some self-respect. Go to the True Classic Tees website, put in GFP for 25% off.
The t-shirts are awesome. They also have the hat. You see Lepore is wearing it. Look at this
rocking hat. This hat. Look at that hat. It's like plus 35 out. This hat is perfect with the mesh back.
Great quality hat. You can wear it forwards or backwards. I love it, man. I love it. True Classic. Shout out to you guys. Love these t-shirts. They fit so good. I love when they fit nice and snug around the arms, but they're not too tight around your midsection. Just so good. It's about time you learn how to dress properly, guys. Upgrade your wardrobe right now with True Classic. Get 25% off at trueclassic.com with the code GFP. Free shipping is included on purchases over $100. 100% risk-free guarantee with a 30-day return policy. Stay classy with True Classic. Welcome to Fresh Ball Fall. It's the season of pumpkin spice and making sure your crotch looks nice. That means sipping cider in a fall breeze and using MANSCAPED products to trim your balls with ease. Even Mother Nature knows it's time to lose the excess clutter for fall. So join the 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping using the code GFP20. Lepore, every man needs to get their hands on some Manscaped products.
You are not a man unless you have your hands on Manscaped products. There, I said it. These products are A+ all the way. I absolutely guarantee to everyone that if you buy these products, Bruno's holding up the Lawnmower 4.0. They're absolutely amazing. You will not regret it, and you will wonder how you survived prior to owning them.
You said it, Lepore. You got to get your hands on the Platinum Package 4.0. You got the Lawnmower 4.0, the body wash and shampoo that make you smell and feel great. I mean, they got boxers. They got so many products. Just go to the website. You are making such a big mistake if you are not using these products. And I'm not just saying this because this is a Manscaped podcast. Like, these products are unbelievable.
Yeah.
So go get your hands on these products. Once again, 20% off and free shipping using the code GFP20. So go to manscaped.com and get 20% off and free shipping using the promo code GFP20. But let's talk about Kyle Dubas now, Lepore, because that was the other big storyline from the start of Leafs training camp, is that he's entering the final year of a 5-year contract, and he has not been offered an extension by Brendan Shanahan and Leafs ownership. And honestly, probably rightfully so, because he hasn't done anything. I mean, obviously the team has been very successful from a regular season standpoint. I've really liked how Dubas has built the team, and I know you share a lot of those same thoughts just based on how he's allocated the money, the value guys that he has signed along the way. And sure, he's made mistakes here and there, just like every general manager has. But I think for the most part, Dubas has done a pretty good job. I'll go through a couple of quotes from Kyle Dubas, and then we'll get your thoughts on it, Lepore.
Sure.
He said, "I believe that I have to be held the most accountable. I fully expect to be judged on the full body of my work over the 5-year term of my contract." So another situation where he was saying all the right things. He's like, I don't want to talk about this later in the season. I'm addressing it right now. Me and my family would like for this to be put to bed. We're going to go through the season, see what happens, judge me based on that at the end of the contract, the end of my 5 years, based on what I have accomplished. If the Leafs decide to extend him at that point, so be it. But that's basically what he said. And he's entering this year as a lame duck GM, essentially, because he has not been extended. So what are your thoughts on that, Lepore?
I don't really have a hard opinion on it, because I'll tell you how I see it. The Toronto Maple Leafs are in and around a $2 billion organization. And what they've shown us in recent years is that they full throttle run like an organization. So at the end of the day, if you have a high-end employee who makes a lot of money, who's a big decision maker, why would you extend him before you had to? Really and truly. Like, unless this team was coming off like a final run or something like that. But why do they have to make that decision? We got one more year left, and we'll see how it goes. And I mean, they're going to keep their ears to the floor. We talked about Matthews. There's going to be communication within the team of what guys want. And by that, I mean the core. And I make the point all the time that it's in sports, media, and fans. We always kind of think that different levels of a team are very separated and kind of independent, where you have the players, you have the coaching staff, you have the management, you have the president, you have the ownership group. And people always kind of make it seem like they're against each other. Like they're full on against each other. They don't talk. They don't communicate. I can't see that being the case. Like I said, these are multi-billion-dollar corporations, and I'm sure they run like corporations. So communication is had. So why would the Toronto Maple Leafs brass make this decision before they have to? And also, to my point, they have another year, first of all, to see results, and also to listen, get some opinions, and see how an extension of Kyle Dubas would affect opinions of those in the organization, let it be Keefe for the players or whomever. I mean, who knows? In their minds, they might be there saying Kyle Dubas is 100% slam dunk going to get extended, but they're just going to wait. Because you mentioned with the Matthews thing, things can always change. So, okay, well, we have the time. It's our right to that time. Let's wait. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I don't think there's any harm in waiting to extend Kyle Dubas, especially, considering what I said, how he hasn't done anything. He hasn't been on a deep playoff run. There's no reason to rush into that room and say, Kyle, we're extending you for another 5 years. Like, there's literally no reason to do that at this point. It's not ideal to have a lame duck GM. It's really not, but I don't think it's the end of the world. But here's what I will say about this whole situation. I think it's going to be huge in terms of the Auston Matthews situation. I think these are connected, because
100%.
You can't, fire Kyle Dubas without consulting Auston Matthews, in my opinion, or the same thing with
100%.
Sheldon Keefe. Like, Auston Matthews is the linchpin. He's the cornerstone of this franchise. And you got to see how he feels about the general manager and the job that he's done. So could you imagine the Leafs fire Kyle Dubas, and then a new GM has to come in, and he's probably going to want his own coach. So he's probably going to have to fire Sheldon Keefe and find a new coach. And then he has to deal with the Matthews contract extension. And then we're not going to be sure how Matthews feels about the new GM and the new regime in place. It could be a mess.
Totally.
It could be a total mess. And this could all happen within the next calendar year. So I think all of these things are connected. And first and foremost, you have to make sure that Auston Matthews is comfortable, honestly, because he's the person that matters the most.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think there's also the idea, okay, and let's paint the picture here. If someone said, I mean, the chance of Dubas not getting extended would be based on them failing in the first round again. The Leafs lose in the first round again. Dubas is gone. Someone's brought in. But to that point, I would say, okay, here you have this team. They can't get past the first round with this core. Is the push to the new GM to make trades? Like, is that guy's job going to be to go out there and can you imagine being a new GM? Oh, I just thought of something. Imagine being the new GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs. You walk in and on your first day, the talk is the extension of Auston Matthews and that kind of pressure. And then imagine a year later, he walks for free. So it's not even you can say you were that guy who extended him and free agency, this and that. That will be a straight pointed finger at that GM. If he comes in, hey, this is your team. This was a clean slate and you let him walk for nothing. Craziness.
That's going to be a lot to deal with, man.
Yeah. So
and like you said, would the new GM come in and there'd be pressure? Like, listen, you got to make some trades here because we got to blow up this core. We can't continue with this same core. And then Nylander is going to be a UFA at the same time too. Like, can you imagine the Leafs screw that up as well and let Nylander walk? Like, I know I'm getting into some like just horrible situations here, but these are all connected. So the Leafs 100%. Have to be very careful. You can't just go out there and fire Kyle Dubas and bring in a new GM right at this time when all of these big decisions need to be made. And sure, they could do that, but the point I'm trying to make is that you better make sure that number 34 is on board with everything because that's what matters more than anything else as far as I'm concerned. So we'll see how that all plays out, Lepore.
Yeah, all this anticipation and these hypotheticals. It's fun. We never do that in Leafland, right?
Oh God. I mean, Leafs Nation could go on forever talking about hypotheticals.
We laugh about the number and we mention the number. Now let's go crazy hypothetical. 2022-23 NHL season. The Toronto Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup. Auston Matthews, another Hart Trophy, another Richard, maybe adds a Conn Smythe to the cabinet. We said he's going to go in there and ask for 13.5 million. What's he asking for now?
Oh God. If the Leafs win the cup and he wins all those awards, we're looking at 14 plus.
Like the max. Like
yeah, we're looking at
of the cap.
Essentially
like
close
16
to the
million
max.
or yeah.
Oh my God.
And let's be very clear, we'd all be okay with it. Every single one of us.
I think Leaf fans would be okay with giving Matthews like 50% of the cap.
Oh, whatever.
If this season played out like you just laid out there, Lepore.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. Can't wait.
All right, man. Oh, yeah. One other thing I should probably add before we move on to our next topic. There are some injury situations that the Leafs are dealing with. We don't really have to get into this. I just kind of wanted to mention it.
Of course.
Pierre Engvall sustained an ankle and foot injury training in Sweden, and he's going to be reevaluated the week of October 3rd. So the Leafs are hoping he'll be cleared at that time. Timothy Liljegren sustained a hernia, which was diagnosed upon arrival in Toronto. And he had the operation last week, and he's going to be out a minimum of 6 weeks if everything goes well. 6 weeks, Dubas said.
I thought it was like 2 weeks or something. 6 weeks?
Yeah,
Shit.
so he's going to be out 6 weeks. So they're saying that if everything goes well, like mid to late November, he should be back in the lineup.
Okay.
So that's a blow. And then Muzzin. They just announced that Muzzin is dealing with back issues, and he probably won't be on the ice until next week. And I'm laughing because there's just always something with Jake Muzzin.
Yeah.
I mean, we love the guy when he's healthy, everything he brings to the table, but please just stay healthy, Jake Muzzin. My goodness.
Does any of this help the Sandin negotiation? And by that, I mean on his end.
You got to think that this is going to start to expedite the process a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
They got to get Sandin back in here as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So... yeah, we'll see how that all plays out. I just kind of wanted to bring that up.
Bring some negativity in there, Bruno? Always negative, Anthony Bruno.
Listen, Lepore, the Leafs are going to be fine. Yeah. All right, they're going to be fine. All right, everybody, It's all going to be fine.
Just like always, right?
All right, man. Let's move on to our next topic here.
Yeah.
PK Subban.
Yeah.
After a successful 13-year career in the NHL, has announced his retirement. I love PK Subban, man. I released a video on TikTok and YouTube yesterday. A little flashback of when I interviewed PK Subban for the first time.
Humble brag, Anthony Bruno. I love it.
10 years ago, I was working at Rogers TV, and I was hosting a show called High School Sports Zone, and they would send me out to interview athletes when they would, come into Toronto, whether I would interview like some Leafs or Jays or Raptors or whatever. And it was during the lockout season, and all these NHL stars were in Toronto at a charity game at the Mattamy Athletic Center at Ryerson. And PK Subban at the time, I was a young guy. I was like 21 at the time, I think. And PK Subban, I think, is like a year older than me. But anyway, okay. He was alone, like on the ice after the game. Not on the ice, but he was like in the bench area, and he was being interviewed by somebody else. And I just saw him, and I'm like, I just ran over to him with my cameraman. I'm like, let's interview PK Subban. And I'll never forget that because he was so humble, class act, took the time to talk to everybody. You could just see he's such a genuine guy, like such a likable dude, so I just wanted to kind of bring that up. We talked about a few things, and I asked him why he's a Habs fan because he grew up in Toronto, and he was telling me how his father was a big Habs fan. You got to kind of follow your father and things like that. But he also did mention Lepore, that he loved watching Doug Gilmour, and that his favorite Leaf of all time is Matt Sundin.
Just slide that in there.
So I just wanted to slide that in there. But, I just wanted to say congrats on a great career to PK Subban. Awesome guy, always entertaining on the ice. Lepore, what are your thoughts? Because I think he still had some more left in the tank, but I'm sure he has other opportunities outside of hockey that he's pursuing at this point.
Yeah, funny enough, I kind of have a PK Subban story myself. So it was years back. My boys took me to Toronto for my bachelor party. And as guys do on a bachelor party, we hit up a club, and we're in the club having a good time. And in walks PK Subban with his brothers and his father. And they were coming from some gala or some event. But you ready to laugh, Bruno? He walked in holding the Norris Trophy.
Come on.
Yeah, so here we are at the club, drinking, having a good time, partying. And it's like, oh my God, is that Subban? And he's holding the Norris Trophy. It was hilarious and total moment, but awesome. Yeah, I mean, PK meant a lot to the NHL. We often make jokes about how the NHL lacks personalities in their individuals, and guys who are good for quotes, and for guys who are willing just to lay their opinions out there. Like, his podcast is amazing. He's a great interviewer. He's open. He's free. Awesome in that regard. As a player, it's kind of funny because we often, I think there's a lot of cases in sports generally where a player can have a really good career, a really strong, accomplished career. But then there is the argument that they could have done more. And Subban had his issues with injuries. I mean, the story was always his back and how he had to get skating coaches, I believe, to help to kind of change his stride style so he wouldn't be in as much pain. But reverse this to that time when he won the Norris Trophy, we'd be sitting here thinking like, this guy might be the captain of the Montreal Canadiens one day. This guy is going to go on deep playoff runs. This guy's going to win multiple Norris trophies. And even at that point, if you polled hockey fans and said, is PK Subban a Hall of Famer? People probably would have said yes. And I don't think that's a hot take. But now, no, he's not a Hall of Famer. And I don't want to say, like, I don't want to be overly negative about it because, like I said, PK had a great career and did a lot. But I think there was room for more. I really do. And there's rumors about what happened in Montreal and why that trade was made. So people can make of that situation what they want. But that was kind of the turning point for him because I think he was so loved in Montreal. He was a different character. And I think him being the captain of the Montreal Canadiens like would have put him into like a different stratosphere. Like Habs fans, comment down below. Like, did you think at one point that Subban was going to be named captain of Montreal? And it would have been awesome because, like I said, the guy's got a personality and he's good for quotes. Great player, man. He was a great player, and I got nothing but positive to say about PK Subban because I appreciated his personality, and he was a blast to watch. At the end of the day, a total blast to watch. So, what was there not to like about PK, man?
Oh yeah, he was awesome. He brought it every single night. He was arguably the most entertaining player in the NHL. Obviously not the best player, not the most skilled, but man, there were so many electric moments that he had. Like I remember that breakaway that I believe he had against Boston when he went like backhand shelf. I mean, some playoff moments, regular season, when he would score goals, just the passion that you'd see off that guy was just, it was unbelievable to watch. But I do agree with you, Lepore. Like based on how he started his career, I think a lot of people thought that he was like a shoo-in to become, I don't want to say an all-time great, but like probably a Hall of Fame player. Like he won the Norris, Lepore, in his third full season in the NHL.
Yeah.
He won the Norris as a 23-year-old defenseman.
Crazy.
Like he got off to a blazing hot start in his career. And, just to go through his resume. So 13 years in the league, 1 Norris trophy, 3-time All-Star, and a 2-time first-team All-Star. Okay. So not bad at all. But, I think a lot of people thought that he probably added maybe another Norris trophy, have some more All-Star appearances. He kind of tailed off towards the end of his career. And, he's not an old guy by any means. He's only 33 years old.
Yeah.
And there were some rumors floating around. Now, these rumors did not come from, the best hockey insiders in the business, but there were some rumors floating around recently that Subban would have came back if he could have joined the Leafs or Habs, but that the interest may not have been there. I don't know if I totally believe those rumors, but it's interesting to think about. Like, if you were the Leafs, Lepore, would you have signed him to a 1-year deal?
You know what? I'm like split on that one because part of me is the whole like eye roll thing of here we go again, another Toronto boy signing that 1-year deal at League Min to play for the Buds. But at the same time, it would have been like, fuck yeah. Like a PK Subban number 76, that excitement. So I think at the end of the day, I would have had the talk, like seeing what he wanted, because whenever these stories come out, like people are pointing to Leafs, like, oh, like why didn't they do it? Like they're crazy. It would have been awesome. They would have had more defensive depth. But at the same time, who knows what PK would have wanted? He may have looked the Leafs in the face if the conversation was actually had and said, okay, well, I want term. And by that, I mean maybe 2 years. And I'm not going to play for League Min. So then it's kind of off for the Leafs. And then there's even the guarantees of, okay, well, I want games and I want minutes. And maybe the Leafs weren't willing to promise that either. So I think it's loaded. It all depends on what he wanted. But I guess the more I think of it, if he looked the Leafs in the face and said 1-year deal, League Min, let's go, I think that's tough to turn down for if you're any NHL team. Just to add PK Subban, the PR would have been great. I don't know. Like I think from that end, if we're like oversimplifying it, I think the answer is yes. I just think there was more to the story if it's actually true.
Yeah, I think there's definitely more to the story. And I just think honestly, PK reached a point where he said, you know what? I got a lot going on off the ice. He's most likely going to move into a broadcasting career. He's going to have a lot of exciting opportunities. And I just think he felt it's time. And I think he could have played easily another few years in the league.
For sure.
Easily 3 or 4 more years. And, he would have been a bottom pairing defenseman on pretty much any team in the NHL. But I think he just reached a point where he's got some exciting opportunities off the ice. And he just felt like it was time to make the leap. And he's probably going to have a successful broadcasting career. And he's going to be successful in probably anything that he pursues, because that's just the type of guy that he is. But yeah, I mean, would have been really, really cool if he signed in Toronto for 1 year, because especially how the Leafs decor is looking right now with Sandin still unsigned, the Liljegren injury situation. Would have been nice to have PK Subban in the fold, but good luck to PK Subban. And I'm
Yeah.
sure he's going to have a very successful career outside of hockey. We all loved watching you play, and best of luck.
Yeah. Before we move on, I think it's a total acknowledgement of how young the NHL is getting. And we said he's 30, he's 34. Like, he's not old.
33.
33. So there you go, 33. And the point I was going to make was, let's go back to that time where he was winning and competing for Norris trophies. I kind of remember the take at the time was Doughty and Carlson were like 1A and 1B. That was the big debate. Who's better, blah, 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 blah. And then Subban kind of fell in that next group. And if I remember correctly, both Carlson and Doughty, I think, are 32. So here we are, not that many years later. These guys are in their early 30s. And where are they? Subban's retired. Carlson, I mean, there's a lot of negativity around him and his contract and that team. And Doughty's still an effective player, but I mean, that guy was like a slam dunk Team Canada guy, no doubt. So it shows, man, like the careers are getting shorter in the NHL and guys' primes are getting shorter.
Life comes at you fast, man. So Subban and Doughty are the exact same age, and Carlson is a year younger than both of them.
There you go.
It's pretty crazy to think about, man. And you said it, the NHL, it's a young man's league at this point.
Yeah.
Like, once you hit your 30s, essentially, people are already starting to talk about your decline. You know, just like people joke about John Tavares not being the same player. He's so overpaid at $11 million. You know, he's the same age as Erik Karlsson. John Tavares is only a year younger than PK Subban and Drew Doughty. It's just crazy how quickly it catches up to you. And again, I'm not saying that these guys aren't effective players. Like, John Tavares almost had a point per game season last year, but it is skewing towards the younger players, the faster, more dynamic player. And yeah, it's pretty crazy to see how quickly the careers of these guys went from, oh my God, these guys are like the 5 best defensemen in the NHL to are they even in the top 10 at this point?
Oh no, man. No
right?
way.
I mean, maybe you could Drew Doughty, like, when he's fully healthy, you could make the argument that he's still a really good player, but there's a lot of guys that have passed Doughty at this point as well. So,
oh man, yeah.
Pretty crazy to think about, right? Okay, Lepore, let's move into our final topic of today's show.
Sure.
This one was juicy. So we talked about the Winnipeg Jets. I believe it was 2 shows ago, and we talked about how going into the season, it's pretty boring because they bring in Rick Bowness, like, not an exciting coach. He's a defensive-minded coach. We didn't know how that would mesh with some of the top players. You know, when you look at Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois, and of course, Blake Wheeler, who has been stripped of the captaincy in Winnipeg by Rick Bowness and the coaching staff. And, you know, there's been rumors over the last few seasons that there have been some issues with Scheifele and Wheeler, and maybe the leadership isn't as strong as people think, and there could be some issues in the room and things like that. And I think now we're definitely seeing that was the case, because Bowness comes in here with his coaching staff, strips Wheeler of the C, and now they are going into the season with no captain. And this Winnipeg Jets team has a lot of talent on its roster. This is not some, you know, garbage team that's rebuilding or anything like that. Like, there's still some legitimate star talent on this roster. And that's a huge slap in the face to Blake Wheeler. I think there's no other way to sugarcoat it. Like, this dude was just stripped of the C. And how do you feel about that, Lepore? Because I think Blake Wheeler must be livid right now, and I do not know how this season is going to play out in Winnipeg.
Yeah, for those listening, not watching, I'm shaking my head as Bruno's telling the story here. This is a perfect example of that old school coach who comes in and he's got these like dinosaur tactics when it comes to motivating people. And I mentioned before, talking about organizations and communication, right? This decision being made, who knows what the feeling is now in the locker room? I mean, I don't know Blake Wheeler personally, but I assume he's not hated and everyone was kind of okay with him being captain, even if they thought it wasn't the best decision. But to strip him of the C, this coach comes in and he's saying, I'm the boss. I'm going to look at this. And if I'm Blake Wheeler, I mean, different guys have different personalities and they play for different reasons. If I was the captain of an NHL franchise and a new coach walked in and said, "You're no longer the captain," I'd be like, "Okay, trade me. You clearly don't like really want me here and you don't think I'm part of the future, so trade me. What am I doing here? What, or like, I'm going to earn back your trust or something." I don't understand these old dinosaur tactics these coaches pull off. And Rick Bowness, man, I mean, I'm not going to say I dislike the guy because I don't, but when the Ottawa Senators came to Ottawa at 92, 93, like I always remember Rick Bowness because he was their first coach. 92, 93. And here we are, like 30 years later. Think about that for a second. And he's still influential in this game. And it's not like the guy's won cups, won Jack Adams trophies where it's like, okay, he's like a legend. And again, he's a respected guy around the league, but I think this is a crazy decision. I really do. Like, just trade him. Just trade him. And people talk about players like no trade clauses, this and that. You know, this coach is coming in and he's going to make this decision. At the end of the day, he doesn't like you. I mean, you can't even say he doesn't love you. He doesn't like you. So if I'm Blake Wheeler, get me out of here. And we talked about this Jets team. We don't know what their ceiling is. We've talked about Scheifele and those comments he made at the end of last season. So who knows what's going to happen with him. It's not a good look for the Jets, man. Like, I'm based on this because this is more of a demonstration of the feel around that team. A feel. And it's not even as if they named a young captain. If there was some young superstar, they were like, okay, Blake's going to move on, stay with the team, wear an A.
Give the seat to Kyle Connor, right? Or
sure.
Something like that.
Sure. No, nobody gets it. This is my team. I'm going to make the decision. Give me a break. I'm worried for the Jets now, man. I'm worried for the Jets because I always say when you go to the rink and you're not happy, you're not going to win. And with all that going on, again, I don't know Blake Wheeler personally. I'm not in the Jets locker room, but I can't imagine them being all gung-ho about playing for this coach right now.
I get a lot of Mike Babcock vibes from Rick Bowness, to be honest with you. And there was a story a couple of years ago. I remember I made a video on this, and I could be forgetting the details, but when he was coaching the Dallas Stars at the time, there was a player, Riley Tufte, a Stars prospect who they called up, and he was going to play in his hometown. I believe they were playing the Minnesota Wild.
Okay.
And he was playing in his hometown for the first time. And he was essentially told that he was going to be in the lineup, and all his family and friends were coming to the game. He gets tickets for all these people. And then the Stars unexpectedly had someone come back into the lineup who was injured, and Bowness scratched Riley Tufte like last minute. It was like 3 or 4 hours before the game, scratched him when he was going to make his debut in his hometown in front of his friends and family. So just, you know, it's just one of those situations where it just gives me the vibe of a coach who's coming in here who thinks it's all about him. And again, I don't know Rick Bowness personally. I don't want to talk about his character, but I will talk about some of the things that we do know and stories that are out there and things that did happen with him in charge. And this is another example of him coming in here and saying, screw you, Blake Wheeler, and this entire leadership group. We're starting from scratch. It's just a weird situation because, like you said, Lepore, they didn't hand the seat to Kyle Connor or Pierre-Luc Dubois, whose agent goes on the radio and says that he wants to play for the Montreal Canadiens. So who the hell knows what's...
PLD needs a reality show, man.
Yeah, that dude is just... I mean, I don't even know who PLD thinks he is, because I think he walks around thinking that he's like Guy Lafleur or something like that. And it's just bizarre. I don't think he's going to be with the Jets long term. It just seems like a mess there, man. Despite the talent they have, it just seems like a mess of a situation. Honestly, I think they're probably going to miss the playoffs again unless they really buy into Bowness and all these guys, you know, play a strong defensive game, because that's kind of Rick Bowness's style. And maybe that's going to affect their offense and they're not going to score as many goals. And, you know, they still have Connor Hellebuck in net, who's one of the best goalies in the league. But I just do not feel good about this Jets team right now. And who knows who's going to emerge as the captain, and who knows if they're going to trade Blake Wheeler. There's just a lot of things going on, and it seems like it could be a mess.
Don't you want, and you'd have to ask these coaches, okay? And I was killing myself laughing, and we'll make it about the Leafs. John Michael Lyles was on Spin Chicklets recently, And he was there when Randy Carlyle was there. And he straight out said Randy Carlyle hated his guts because as a player, because he was an American defenseman. Period. He just hated the fact that he was a smooth skating American defenseman. He was telling stories about how you could only drink water in the facilities and like limits to beer. There's like 1 beer per player on each flight. I want to ask coaches, and again, people, comment down below if you have an answer for this. Don't you want the players to like you? Simple. I mean, we can talk about coaching tactics and how they approach games and their work off the ice and how they build a lineup. But if these guys don't like you, none of that matters. At the end of the day, if they're grumpy, they're not going to win. I don't get it. I don't get it. And like these guys are dinosaurs, man. Pure and utter dinosaurs who I think can't read the room, have no sense of what these young players are like and why they are still in the NHL. Coaches like this, I have no fucking clue.
Yeah, it's one thing if you're going to put your foot down and you want to use those tactics for your team to respect you. But it's another thing if your team is just going to hate your guts for it. And that is not what you want as a head coach. I've never been a head coach in the NHL, but I would not want my players to hate me. I mean, it's really as simple as that. You want your players to want to play for you. Sure, they can sort of fear you in a way and have a lot of respect for you. But if they don't like you, that's not going to end well. It's as simple as that, Lepore. So I think you nailed it. Is there anything else you want to get off your chest before we end this podcast?
No, but if I'm thinking correctly, the next time we do a show, we'll actually have some hockey to talk about. We have some preseason games coming up. So giddy up, everyone.
Really excited about that. That is right. The Leafs are going to start their preseason schedule very shortly here. So the next time you hear us on the GFP podcast, we will actually be talking about some games.
Yeah. You know what fucking sucks, Bruno? Actually, every year the Leafs come to Ottawa for a preseason game. They usually do kind of like a split squad back-to-back thing. And every year I take my nephew, who's a huge Matthews and Leafs fan. And it's great because again, it's a preseason game, so it's not overly busy. When you go down for the warm-ups, there's not a million people around, so it's just awesome. It's a different experience. And this year, they're not getting one. The Leafs aren't coming to Ottawa, and if I remember correctly, the reason is because the Leafs will be playing the Senators in Belleville. That's sort of like a thing for the people of Belleville.
So that's what they're doing.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. If anyone's going to that game, if you've never been to Belleville before, there is a spot called Burger Revolution. And in my opinion, I'm pretty confident it's the best burger in Canada.
Okay.
Most times I'm driving to Toronto, I'll make a point to time it so lunch is around the time I hit Belleville so I can pull over and get a burger. For those who've had it, comment down below. For those who think there's a burger that's better than Burger Revolution, comment down below. And for those of you who think Burger Revolution is trash, comment down below. I can't wait to read them.
Jeez, Lepore, I was just looking at the Leafs schedule, and March 18th is the first time they play the Senators in Ottawa. So I think I'm going to have to make the trip to Ottawa. I'm going to have to stop off, grab a burger, and then me and you are going to go watch that game on March 18th.
100%. But yeah, so they don't come for a preseason game, and I think it's their 2 games in Ottawa are like March and April.
Yeah. I'm looking at the schedule right now. It's March 18th and April 1st.
There you go. So I'm not going to see my buds. Well, I'll make the trip to Toronto. We'll go to a game in Toronto, bro.
Yeah, sounds good.
Let's do it.
I love it, man. All right. That is going to do it for episode 75 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, the Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast, hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. If you're a new listener, or if you've been listening for a long time and you really enjoy the show, please help us out and give us a 5-star rating and review on both Apple and Spotify. And if you're watching us on YouTube, we would appreciate it so much if you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. So for Michael Lepore, I'm Anthony Bruno, and we will see you in the next one.
Thanks for listening, everyone.